day!
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again. Today, I get to do one of my favorite things in the world. One of the things that I enjoy most about what I do is the opportunity to introduce my viewers to new names and incredible talent. And today, I'm once again able to do that. This knife maker's name is David Kulis. And don't get confused by the pouches that you're seeing here where it says DK Knives. Not to be confused with DK Knives, who is David Kraus. This is, Damian Kraus. I just messed that up. Sorry about that, buddy. This is David Kulis. They just happen to have the same initials. Now, David Kulis is a knife maker that began down this road later than most. Because, you'll hear a lot of stories about knife makers that started making knives when, they were teenagers or their early 20s and they've been doing it for 50 years and all that kind of stuff. Well, just like me, he got his start pretty late in life and borrowing from the natural skills he developed being kind of a DIY handyman of sorts around his own home, where he renovated quite a lot of it himself and, redid bathrooms and kitchens and basements and all that kind of good stuff. He kind of developed this skill set and learned that, hey, I'm actually pretty good with my hands and I can build things and I can create things and I can make things, and that's pretty cool. So he graduated onto woodworking soon after that. And then that evolved into making custom pens. And it was there that he met some knife-making royalty, David Broadwell. Now, David Broadwell is an artist whose work I've showcased on my channel many, many years ago. He brings his artistic mindset into knife making and creates unique masterpieces that fetch quite a high price. And I've known David for quite a long time, and I always found him to be a rather fascinating individual, and his mindset into how he interprets knife making is pretty amazing, because he's not just making a simple run-of-the-mill everyday knife. Everything is very methodical about how he designs everything and how he makes his knives, and he's a pretty damn talented knife maker. So that's a pretty good dude to learn from. Anyway, while he was inspired by Broadwell's work, David decided to invest a small amount in some basic tools that he needed in his shop to start making knives. His earliest memory was teaching himself how to make knives by replicating one of David's arachnid models. Over time, he mastered one skill, then he moved on to evolve and continue to evolve over the years, making different styles and working with a lot of various different materials. Now, David tends to work with natural materials for his handle work, as you can see exhibited in these two Spectres right here. I'm going to go ahead and pop that bad boy open so you can see that. And that's what kind of makes his work a little bit more exotic and a little bit more special, since today most makers tend to focus on tactical style knives. He wanted to set himself apart by making functional knives that had a richer aesthetic and popped with more vibrancy. And this is a great example of that. This is just gorgeous. I really dig this one a lot. And you're going to see a handful of cool knives here today. But I will tell you this, as cool as they all are, if I were picking one to add to my personal collection, it would be this one right here. And we'll discuss this one in a little bit more detail in just a little bit. And I think that's going to shock you because in one of these cases, yes, here it is the Spectre XL, which is using Damascus for the bolster. And you guys know I have a serious soft spot for Damascus in my life, and as well as the shred carbon fiber, which I love as well. There's just something about the overall presence of the regular Spectre down there that just blows me away. So we've got the Spectre and the Spectre XL. Those are the model names that we're dealing with here. Man, these are just gorgeous. Really, really nice detail work on these as well. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there. Now, we were talking about how he likes to choose these natural materials to kind of have a richer, more exotic and unique look. Well, the same kind of goes for his steel finishes too, I think you're going to notice. He's a chemist, so he's actually enjoyed experimenting with various chemicals to see how they treat, colorize, or otherwise oxidize the steel surfaces that he's working with. And this, I think, is one of the most unique. As we take a look at this, I've got to try and get this in the right light because it's so mirror polished, it just wants to reflect white. But he has, coming out of this beautiful mosaic Damascus, he's got browns and purples and blues that go off into magentas and greens. It is so wicked cool. I don't know what he did to do that. The only people that I've seen pull colors similar to that out of Damascus really have been some of the Central Florida knife makers like Melvin Lozada and Reese Wieland, which I believe Melvin learned from Reese as well. And that's a unique way of, instead of just niter bluing the Damascus, he's pulled out kind of like this oil slick kind of coloration that comes out of it, where it's a little bit rainbow, very iridescent. It brings out some really interesting colors. So I thought that was really cool, and that's where that comes from him being a chemist. I'm sure he's played with different chemicals and made different, I don't know. I don't know chemist shit, so he's had to have done something to create this unique finish that is so, I don't know, it's mesmerizing. All of his Damascus etches look good, but there's something rather unique and special about that one. Now, one other thing that gives him a leg up on this part is his friendship with Peter Martin, who's famous for his rich hues of color in his niter blue Damascus knives and unique treatments of exotic materials like superconductor. The stuff that Peter does with superconductor, I had never seen anyone else do before him. Really wild, really crazy stuff. Very, very cool. He's got some beautiful Damascus etching. He likes to work with Damascus, Sanmai, and things like that that are going to give unique patterns to each of his knives. So you could pick up two of Peter Martin's knives that are the exact same model, and they could be the same basic composition of materials. Let's say Damascus bolster and carbon fiber scales over blued titanium frames, right? But then you'll look at the patterns that he's chosen in the blades, whether it be Sanmai or Damascus, and that makes each of those two knives completely unique, even though they're very, very much the same. Really, really cool stuff. Peter is extraordinarily talented, and his knives are among the best made and the most beautiful in the world. Peter is also a hell of a great person, someone I've known for almost a decade now, I think, and he's always willing to offer advice or share a funny story if you happen to catch him at a show. He's helped David by teaching him some of his brand of sorcery and elevated his skill set over time. Now, each of these knives are handmade by David in his shop, and he's only a part-time maker who prefers to make knives because he wants to, instead of just being his sole source of income, where he feels like he's got to crank them out. So you probably won't ever see the market flooded with his work, because he's not on a push to get a ton of knives out the door for any reason. Now, out of them all, this one has probably the smoothest and fastest action. His grinds are unique too. I really like looking at his grinds. They're very subtle. XL. This looks like bird's eye maple. I can't verify that. I have one of his cards here, but this is for this one right here, just so you get a chance to see it. This is what his certificate of authenticity, or certificate of origin, I should say, is going to read like. So you can pause that if you'd like to, and you can read how he likes to describe his work. This kind of looks like bird's eye maple. Then we have the Damascus bolsters. He's got titanium hardware here that he has anodized blue. More Damascus for the pocket clip. Definitely black Damascus. I can see the zirconium in there. And then he has taken this same Damascus here and done a raised spine backspacer on it, which is also unique and cool. How does that feel? You know, I really thought that that was going to be problematic in the hand, but it's really not. I think it's just because of the way he shaped it. I really thought that was going to be an issue. It doesn't feel bad at all, actually. I do like the action on this. The detent is a medium detent, so it's just enough to get it to fire out really, really nicely without being a finger breaker. And then it's extraordinarily smooth on the close. Blade is nicely centered. Let's take a look at his lockup. Because whether you're interested in this model or a different one, it's important to look at the workmanship and skill that he has on display here with these knives. So even though, yes, centering and lockup are very basic things, these are things that you want to see on display in the work that he has chosen to present. More beautiful Damascus here. Oh, got to get past that. It's a late detent, but it's a crisper detent. I'm wondering, is that a flat face detent? Because it kind of feels like it, and it kind of sounds like it. But I don't know if I can... Yes, it is. He has done a flat face detent. Now, I want to talk about that for a second, because that's something we don't often see. And if you go back a lot of years on my channel and you look at knives that I have reviewed from Po Han Lu, as well as his mentor and his friend that taught him how to make knives, David Mosier, where I have reviewed a couple of his crossfires, one from my collection, one that I had borrowed before I had one made by him. David was the first guy that I knew that did a flat face detent, and it's a very specific feeling. And in a bolstered knife like this, it's a very specific sound too. You can hear it breaking in a different way, and it's delightful. Now, it's really good in a knife like this that's a liner lock, because if it's a frame lock and your finger is putting any amount of pressure on the lock, it's pushing that flat face detent into that detent hole, and it won't let you open it. So by doing a liner lock, that's pretty great. Let's see if you can hear it. There's like a click as it breaks. I like that a lot. The only thing that you might not like about a flat face detent, actually two things. One thing is just what I had mentioned. If it's not tuned just right, or if it's a frame lock and you've got any pressure on the lock bar, it could be really, really, really hard to get it to break the detent. And the other thing is, more during break-in than any other time, but it can still happen later at some point, is that flat surface of the detent ball, which again is a ball, so it should normally be round, and it's been flattened. You'll hear it as the blade is riding along it when it's opening or closing. It can cause a scraping or squealing noise that is god-awful. Now, that's an easy fix. All you're going to do is you're going to take and find the detent ball, which we have found right here. And you're just going to put the tiniest of drops of lubricating oil right there on the detent, making sure not to get any on the lock face whatsoever. And then you just run the action a few dozen times, open and closed. And that will allow it to wear that detent track in, and the lubricating oil will stop the screeching. All right, then we get to the regular Spectres. These two were the Spectre XLs. This is gorgeous too. Now, I didn't ask him what the materials were on these various knives, but look at the amount of detail work that he's doing here. You've got the titanium liners that he has, it looks like he's done a fine eggshell finish on them and then anodized them blue. The backspacer is a floating backspacer. Really, really nicely done. That is also done with the same Damascus being used for the blade as well. And when I had first unboxed these, before I picked the knife up and felt it, I had assumed that this was just eggshell finished titanium that he had anodized gold, but that is not the case. This appears to be bronze or brass for the bolsters. Definitely got some weight to it. And that means that's going to patina and age over time. Some people are into that, some people are not. Oh, look at that, the standoff back here. There's no way. I'm seeing stuff now. There is no way he did that out of Damascus. He did. He turned that standoff out of Damascus. That is a really interesting touch. He's jeweled the inside of the titanium liners, which again is something that you really only see on a very, very high-end, very expensive knife. Now, I do not know what the prices are on any of these, so I apologize for that. I'm usually good about getting all that information, and I honestly completely forgot. He has jeweled the liners on this one as well, and this has a bronze to gold anodized titanium liner setup. He's done a bronze anodizing for the pivot collars. Went to more of a gold for the custom-made pivot as well. I mean, and look at that. These are beautifully machined pivots. Are they all? That's custom. This is custom. This is, it looks like a Steve Kelly 6-shooter. The same pivots that I used for a lot of years for the hardware on my fixed blades. And he's also done the pocket clip here out of the same Damascus that he used for the blade. My God, do I want this knife. This thing is just awesome. And here's the weird thing, and I don't remember if I had ever mentioned it in any of my videos way back when, but many, many years ago, I did not like natural wood being used on folders. And I didn't start to get an appreciation for wood until I became a knife maker myself and started looking at all the various different material choices that I had for handles and making my own knives. And I found a deep love for koa, for desert ironwood, for ancient bog oak, a few different woods that I really, really, really fell in love with because they added an extra dimension of character to all of the knife designs that I was doing. And if you wanted to dress it up, that was one hell of a great way to do it. Especially because at the time I wasn't ready to work with materials like Damascus or anything. And I've only worked with Damascus a couple of times. And I was very happy with how it turned out. But still, there's something about when you're able to work with wood and get a really nice finish out of it and really make it look good, there's something special about it. Man-made materials, synthetic materials, stuff like carbon fiber, yeah, it looks great, and it certainly has its uses, but it's not, For some reason, for me, it's not as rewarding as pulling off a nice, rich finish out of a natural material like wood. There's just something very special about that. And I probably work with carbon fiber more than any other material that I've ever worked with. But when I find the right wood and I'm able to finish it just the right way, it feels really special. I think because there's such a transformation during the process of making knives. Because the second you hit it with sandpaper to start shaping it and doing things to it, it looks terrible. And it's going to look like that for a while. That thing might be on your bench looking like a dog turd for a month or for weeks until you sit down and you start hand sanding it and you start bringing the finer scratches out of it and you get it smoothed out. And there's different ways to do it as well. Like something like this. This is very clearly very, very high sanded and then buffed and polished, which is now my preference. And something like this was most likely oiled. And the oiling, and you could take that up to a piano finish as well, which is what you see right here. You can see how polished and reflective this wood is. Doing it this way, doing it with oil, is so much more laborious. You're spending so much more time because you have to let that oil soak into the wood and you have to let it seep overnight. So you're going to sand it to whatever you're going to sand it to for that first step. You know, let's say you're going to do 220 that day. Maybe you'll do 220 and 400. You'll coat it in oil. You'll go back over it with the 400 again, and you're going to let that oil soak in, and then overnight it's going to seep. So it's going to start pooling up and sweating out of the pores of the wood. Then the next day you're going to do maybe another 2 grits. Maybe you're going to do your 600 and 800 grit that day. And you're going to oil it again and let it sit overnight again. So it's now turning this into a multi-day process. And it's possible you could have gotten through your 220, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, and 2,000 all in one day. But because you're using the oil, because you're wanting a certain look out of it, it's got to sit overnight in between the different steps. So it's pausing everything for a whole day. So yeah, it definitely stretches things out. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent again. That seems to be my MO for today. Anyway, I wanted to introduce you guys to David Kulis. And thank you to David for trusting me with 4 of these beauties. I have had them for longer than expected, and because I really should have turned these around in a week or so. And unfortunately, I've had them for over a month, about a month and a half. So thank you, David, so much for trusting me with these beauties. I will say this, if he was able to send these to me, they might be available. I've not confirmed this. So what I would say is if you're interested in the Spectre XL here, or these 2 Spectres, you might want to shoot him a message on Instagram and ask if they're available. Maybe they're going to a dealer. I don't know. And if you buy this one, don't tell me. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about how much you love it, how exotic that beautiful blade is. Just bite me and shut up and enjoy the knife. All right, guys, that's it for me for tonight. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me, and I'll see you on the next video.